You are actually your own biggest threat, not AI. I want you to let that sink in right now, because we're all worried about AI, but actually we're the single biggest threat to ourselves, not AI. Years ago, I was at a beach somewhere in the world, and I was talking to an entrepreneur, and we were talking about the rate of change that we were going through, kind of like what Vish was saying earlier about the rate of change that we're going through. And the saying that I heard was, if the rate of change outside your business is greater than the rate of change inside your business, you're out of business. So when I'm talking to CEOs about that, it's to understand that they have to adapt or die. Well, as individuals inside of companies, we have to adapt or die as well. So you do have to grow, and you can't wait for the CEO of your company or the COO of your company or a team member that you're working with to try to help you to scale. You have to get ahead of that wave and get ahead of that curve on your own. There's a few big problems that we're all facing right now. Number one is we don't really know the core leadership skills to actually get better at and to excel at. And we're overwhelmed with all the information that's out there. We also often work with CEOs and entrepreneurs that are so self-absorbed or so self-focused, and often in the right way, that they're working on growing themselves. You know, they'll be parts of YPO or EO, or they'll go to all these events around the world. They'll pay for coaches, they'll join masterminds, whatever, but they're not really worried about growing everyone else in their team, so you're kind of left to swim on your own. Or you're working with small to medium-sized companies that don't have learning departments. They don't have big training departments like they have at a Starbucks or that we had at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Or maybe you're even just so buried in the day-to-day that you don't have time to come up for air. For all of us as leaders, there's 12 core skills that I'm going to introduce you to that if you can get really good at, you will stay very relevant in your job, you will excel in your careers, you'll run bigger and better businesses. This is the stuff that I was coaching the royal family on. I was actually coaching the Emir and the Sheikhs of Qatar. They own the country. There's not a lot of coaches out there that coach people that own an actual country. That was 9 years ago. I was flown over to do that, and I was working with them on some of these skills. My real-world MBA came from running this company. I hired a guy named Kimball Musk. That was Elon's younger brother. I trained Kimball Musk in running a business. In January of 1995, I was a reference for Elon Musk and Kimball Musk for their very first round of funding for a company called Zip2. So 30 years ago, I was their primary reference, and I'm written up in Elon's book. It talks about college pro painters in the book by Walter Isaacson. They funded Zip2 to the tune of $3 million in January of 1995. 2.5 years later, they sold Zip2 for $320 million in cash to Compaq. It was the largest cash acquisition in history at the time. And College Pro is credited for that. Well, I was actually the reason, or part of the reason, because Kimball learned these skills that I'm going to teach you are the skills that I gave him. The venture capital firm didn't want to fund Elon because he hadn't done anything. He dropped out of school. He was a little bit crazy. They funded the business based on the leadership skills that Kimball Musk had, and those are the skills I'll introduce you to. When I was the COO of this company, 1-800-GOT-JUNK, we went from $2 million to $106 million in revenue in 6 years with no debt. We gave up no equity, and we ranked as the #2 company in Canada to work for. And it was these skills, again, that I'm going to introduce you to that I did there. I focused at 1-800-GOT-JUNK on growing people in 2 core areas. Number one was their skills. And I obsessed on growing the 12 core leadership skills that if you all think about and work on yourself, you'll excel on. The second thing I worked with them on was confidence. But I recognize that it's almost like we're climbing up 2 ladders. Our left hand and our left foot are climbing up a skills ladder, and then our right hand and our right foot are climbing up a confidence ladder. If we grow our skills, we'll grow our confidence, where we can grow our skills and we can grow our confidence. So your job as a leader and as a human is to work on growing your confidence and on growing your skills. And that's what we'll talk about. So the first thing to understand is, what are the skills that you need? Well, at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I trained and certified everyone on the leadership team and all 330 franchisees in these 12 skills. They're now an $850 million top-line revenue company. These were the 12 skills, you can take a screenshot, that every single franchisee got trained in and certified in. Every person on the leadership team got trained in. These are the skills that CEOs right now pay me $4,800 an hour to coach them on over the course of a year. But I'm going to give these skills to you today so that you can actually focus on growing yourself. So imagine if you had these skills, if you actually had those skills and the confidence to actually push those skills out, and not necessarily at a gold or Olympian level. Maybe you're not the best in the world at situational leadership, but maybe you get to a bronze capability or to a silver capability. That's all you need to strive for at this point. Don't worry about being perfect on every single skill, but get a base level of competency. Stand up if you've interviewed and hired someone. So almost everyone in the room has interviewed and hired somebody. If you have not had at least a full hour of training on how to do proper job interviews, open questions, closed questions, torque, reference checks, probing people, if you've not had at least an hour of training on doing interviews, I want you to sit down. So almost half of you have done interviewing and you have no fucking idea what you're doing. That's the problem, okay? Sit down for a second. These 12 skills are so critical that most of you are flying blind. Business isn't difficult, we make it difficult for ourselves. We would never send our kid off to play Little League baseball without teaching them the basics of how to play baseball. Otherwise, Johnny would come home and say, Daddy, baseball sucks. It's like, no, Johnny, you suck at baseball. Business is difficult because we don't have the core basic skills. So AI is not going to replace you. Someone using AI will replace you. If you want to be managing and leading people, the people that have the base level of skills that are all freely available out there are the ones that are going to replace you as a manager. Okay? It's not because you dress better or you're more liked or you're prettier. That might get you a tiny little bit of an edge, but the people that grow inside of organizations and grow their companies are the ones that have these 12 core skills. So the second thing to understand is how you learn as a leader. There's a cycle of learning that I like taking people through. At the top of the cycle, we talk about abstract conceptualization. This is when you learn a new concept, right? You're learning the concept, you're learning about the idea. This is like when you read a book or you go to a speaking event. And then after you start playing with it, that's called the act of experimentation. And after you're playing with it a little bit, then you can start using it in your day-to-day. That's the concrete experience. And then when you go back and think about it later, you think about your learning, you think about how you were putting in place, you think about where you struggled. That's the reflective observation. So if I was going to learn a skill like interviewing someone, I might read a book on interviewing. Maybe I read the book Who by Jeff Smart, and then I practice it. Then maybe I video myself interviewing and I get somebody to critique me. And then I watch the videos myself and I'm like, wow, I really suck at that. And then maybe I'll read another book. Maybe you'll read the chapter in Double Double on people. And then you'll practice it. And then you'll use it, and then you'll video. And then maybe you'll hire a coach, and you'll practice what the coach teaches you, and you'll use it. And you go through this cycle of learning a few times, and that's how you grow your competency. Learning interviewing is not reading one book, putting it on a shelf, and saying you know it. I've had hundreds of hours, literally hundreds of hours, training just on the one skill of interviewing. When I actually interviewed and hired Kimball Musk out of Queen's University in December of 1993, I actually had a video on a VHS tape of me doing that interview so one of the vice presidents in the company could critique me on my interviewing and hiring skills. I also hired his cousin, Peter Reeve, who went on to build Solar City. That's a couple of years later. The interviewing skills you practice, but the same with situational leadership and coaching and everything else. You're going to learn from things like books and from videos and from podcasts. And that's where you get the abstract conceptualization. You're going to learn from actually hiring a consultant or hiring a coach. And that's where you'll get more of the abstract conceptualization. And you need to be able to go in and advocate for yourself to your CEO or to your boss or to your board if you're the CEO to have more money available for training, right? This is kind of beginning with the end in mind and sharpening the saw. The more that you work on growing yourself, that is working on the business versus in the business. So taking time in the middle of a week, do your training on a Wednesday at 2 in the afternoon, not at night. Training yourself and growing yourself and getting skills and going through course content is literally middle of the day core things that you should be doing to scale yourself and your company. Maybe you'll attend conferences. You should all be at Mind Valley University this summer in Amsterdam. God knows I will be. Maybe you'll look and hire mentors. And by the way, a quick shortcut. If you want to find a mentor to help you in growing, I'd like you to sit down first and think, what are the core areas that I want to get better at? And make a list of the top 5, the top 10 things. Maybe make a list of the things you're struggling at. And then make a list of what describes the mentor that you're actually looking for. Years ago, I was looking for a mentor for myself. So I made a list of the top 7 things I wanted to get better at. Then I talked about the kind of person I was looking for. Then I described the kind of business. Because I was growing 1-800-GOT-JUNK, we were operating in 330 cities and 4 countries. I wanted someone with multi-unit operations, a good brand, really good leadership programs, somebody who ran operations. And I wanted a business that I admired. And back in 2003, 2004, Starbucks was one of those brands. I went online on the internet and I found the org chart, and there's 3 people that seems like their titles might be the kind of person that might be able to coach me in operations. Does anyone know these 3? And one of our franchisees, Drew Boyles, who's now the mayor, one of the mayors in El Segundo, California, sent me a note. He goes, I used to report to Greg Johnson. He's the guy of those 3 that you want to mentor you. He's the head of global operations for Starbucks, and he's being groomed as the COO at Starbucks. So when I called Greg, I said, I want you to mentor me. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's why I'm looking for it. Here's how I identified you. Oh, and by the way, I want you to do a 1-hour call with me every month. And I want you to come and meet with me in Vancouver once a quarter, and then on the next quarter, I want to come and meet with you at your head office for a full day each quarter. We want to commit for 2 years, and I can't pay you. He goes, you can't pay me? And I said, no, let me correct that. I don't want to pay you because I want you to give back to me because I know someone helped you in your career. And he said, that's the best pitch I've ever been given. I would be honored to coach you. Let's do this. And for 2 years, but that's because I began... It's because I began with thinking about, so don't just call someone and say, will you mentor me? We're going to say no. Don't call me because I'm going to say no because you got to pay me for that now. But if you want to get mentored, think, what do you want to get better at? Okay?